Good evening. I would like to call to order the Keizer City Council in regular session. It is Monday, July 2nd, 2018, and ask our city recorder to please call the roll.
Councilor Ryan?
Here.
Councilor Freeman? Here. Councilor Reed?
Here.
Mayor Clark?
Here.
Council President Parsons?
Here.
Councilor Herrera?
Here.
And Councilor Anderson?
Here.
Thank you very much. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now we know who didn't leave before the 4th of July weekend holiday. You're all here in chambers and probably going to be celebrating the second half of the week. We have nothing under tonight for special orders of business, so I would like to then go to committee reports, appointments to Keizer Points of Interest Committee, Keizer Public Arts Commission, Keizer Festival Advisory Board, City Youth Counselor, and Keizer Public Arts Commission Youth Liaison. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Volunteer Coordinating Committee met on June 21st to review the applicants and interview candidates for openings on several city committees. The committee is recommending the following applicants for appointments: Keizer Public Arts Commission, Kim Steen to position number 3. Keizer Festival Advisory Board, Sherry Gottfried to position number 2. Keizer Points of Interest Committee, Bob Bush and Jennifer Thomas to positions 3 and 4 respectively. Youth Counselor Ann Ferris to City Council. And Youth Committee Liaison Sydney Snap to Keizer Public Arts Commission. It is recommended City Council will accept the Volunteer Coordinating Committee's recommendation on these appointments. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the staff report? Councilor Freeman?
I don't have any questions. I just have a comment. I just want to say for once we had a room full of candidates for our committees, which is really nice, and I think we are full for the first time in a really long time. And we have 2 new youth, our new youth counselor, Annie. I know it says Ann, but she says she likes to go by Annie, who will be joining us, and Sydney, and they both participated in some conversation that we had during the VCC meeting, the Volunteer Coordinating Committee. So they really stepped up and were already participating. So some great input.
Wonderful.
We'll be lucky to have all of them.
Thank you very much. Any further comments or questions? Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Keizer City Council approve the Volunteer Coordinating Committee's recommended appointments. Keizer Public Arts Commission, Kim Steen to position 3. The Keizer Festival Arts Advisory Board, Sherry Gottfried to position 2. The Keizer Points of Interest Committee, Bob Bush and Jennifer Thompson to positions 3 and 4 respectively. Youth Counselor Annie Ferris to City Council, and Youth Committee Liaison Sydney Snap to Keizer Public Arts Commission.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to accept the Volunteer Coordinating Committee's recommendations for the committees for the city and for our Youth Counselor and Youth Liaison to Public Arts. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Several of the people who have volunteered are here tonight. I want to thank you for your volunteer service. We really appreciate you and all of the volunteers who serve on the committees and commissions. It's part of the team effort where we, the people of Keizer, help run and make decisions for our city. So thank you very much for your willingness to serve. We have now public testimony. This time is provided for citizens to address the council on any matters other than those on the agenda scheduled for public hearing. We have one public hearing tonight, and that is the Keizer Development Code Text Amendment, Historic Resources, and that is it. So if you want to address the council on other matters, you're welcome to do so. I have 2 people signed up, and I'll go first with Mr. Ken Gierloff. If you would just introduce yourself and give your city of residence for the record.
Name is Ken Gierloff. I live here in Southeast Keizer. Madam Mayor, honored councilman, I'm here tonight representing Southeast Keizer Neighborhood Association. First of all, I'd like to take time since I have the microphone and TV to announce our meeting this Thursday here in the Canary Room, 6:30. We hope folks will show up. We're planning to have a potluck picnic on National Night Out at our park in Southeast Keizer, Ben Miller Family Park. We hope to get folks out and have some kid games and stuff like that, so we're starting now to plan that. We hope folks show up, help us plan that. So that's ongoing, and the main reason I'm here tonight is to try and find some relief for an ongoing problem in the nuisance code. We seem to be unable to deal with the ones that seem to linger, the people we can't get served, the people that just make no contact, that don't pull permits when we think they should have, so inspections aren't done when they should be, and they just fall through the cracks. And it's not to disparage the planning department at all. They've done a great job with what they have. I think they're just lacking some of the tools to make it come to fruition and get some of these things cleared up. We have a property that is lingering from when the neighborhood association disbanded before. It's still ongoing, and you know, that's just a bit much, and it's now spread where it's affected several neighbors that have joined in the the mess, and you know, it just continues to spread. You know, we need to nip those things in the bud before they become a much larger problem. So, like I said, we're looking to find maybe there's you know, more ordinances we need, or a tightening ordinance, or tie ordinances to the building code. So where there's issues like that they're work together hand in hand. I just don't have the answer. We're looking for a solution. So we look to council to what you have, your resources.
Mr. Brown?
So Ken and I talked earlier today, and part of the issues that we have is some of these problems are very complex. Some they have the state involved, they have the building department at Marion County involved, they have just a number of different things. So we don't have good tools in our tool basket. Tool chest, I guess is a better word. Box. That's the word I'm looking for. In our bunch of tools.
It would be very pretty. Pink basket.
I like baskets.
Anyway, these chronic properties that seem to be hanging on, we address the issues, we address the tall grass and weeds, we address the junk and solid waste, we address all of these things, and they require involvement from our code enforcement officer. The property that Mr. Gerloff is referring to literally does go back for a decade, and or more even. So currently, Ben deals with a total of 31 different ordinances, 31 or more. And I think some of the issues that we have are, it's difficult for people to navigate those separate ordinances. And so I think what we would be willing to do for council, I know this is the first time you have heard it, but I would be willing to investigate what different options we may be able to develop. Other examples, looking at other jurisdictions, and come back to council with perhaps some suggestions as to what can be done with our ordinances. Keep in mind, for example, today, Mr. Gerloff suggested that maybe we bring in-house some of the Marion County building inspection functions, to which I...
A little bristle.
So it's a complex matter, and there are no easy solutions. Some of the solutions would require additional resources. And I think council needs to know that going in, that if we are really going to attack these problems, there may be a commitment of additional resources. But at this point, it's because of the complexity, and because, as I said, it's over 30 different ordinances that are in play here, I would suggest that we come back to council with some suggestions on different approaches for how we could look at this issue.
So if I understand correctly, there's an opportunity here to take a look at our code enforcement ordinances and how we can better coordinate, make some changes so they're all easier to understand and align for actual enforcement. Because I've got a neighboring property in my neighborhood, which is, you're about to get an email about because it's back.
They,
But
they are chronic.
It's chronic. These are certain property owners that absolutely, for whatever reason, do not maintain the property in an accessible or healthful or compatible way with the neighborhood where, in the case of my neighborhood, we're talking, 2-foot weeds and blackberries run rampant and so forth, not to mention whatever's behind there. So, I completely understand. I know you do as well. So how can we be of assistance in this process?
Just know that we will come back, and just be aware that this is, it is an issue that we deal with in code enforcement regularly. Ben is constantly out to these properties on a regular basis. The neighborhood associations are great allies. We depend on them, and we hope to be able to keep that communication as a strong part of any solution. But so I would just say, keep in your mind that when we come back to you, we're going to have a range of different options that we could look at.
Could we improve our communication with the county and maybe get better response on some of our items? I know, we're, at least one property, we've been waiting for a long time for a response or even a report of where they're at on their case.
And that, sure, communication can always be improved, no matter who or where or what. But, but I think that's one of the things we would like to explore, is how we might be able to provide tools in our tool chest for that may strengthen their position.
Well, back in the 90s, we did a real good job of writing the ordinance for the police department. We never got, it was unfinished business. When we expanded, we never got to the nuisance ordinance side, and then that was unfinished business for me even back then. So this is, like I said, a long time coming in my mind, and so any way I can help, certainly would.
Okay, so what I understand is what you will be doing is coming back to us with recommended changes to better coordinate our nuisance ordinances, and if you feel that we need more community involvement in developing those, you will let us know if that would be a course of action you would like to take.
Well, and it may be more than just coordinating. It may be actually different approaches based on other jurisdictions and what kinds of tools they implement. I know Ken is a very active member of the statewide association of code enforcement officers, and so he has a good network and a good resource base.
Okay. So opportunity to modernize. Councilor Herrera.
Nate, when you say additional resources, what are you talking about? Like talking about more people?
Perhaps.
Pardon?
Perhaps.
So, and it sounds like it's several properties, or?
We have one real linger, but yeah, there's several properties. We deal with the worst. We don't go down that list very far. We stay at the top with the worst of the worst.
And as I told Ken, his neighborhood association is not unique. These properties are throughout the city, and it deals with a number of different social issues to mental health issues, a number of different
The
kinds
reason
of.
I ask is because in our particular neighborhood, like 8 years ago, we had one place that we didn't know what the situation was, and we found out later that somebody had died, and so we kind of pitched in and helped out. Now that was a whole different deal than what you're talking about, 10 years, and because from my experience, some of those are habitual, if you say. But
And of course, it ranges from, we have had some dramatic successes as well that I could share with you the details. But so Ben works hard at it and works cooperatively with the property owners, and it ranges from being very successful and getting good results to some of these chronic things that are really pushing the envelope on the other extreme. Not for lack of working at it, though, I might add.
Well, our one situation, we were talking about maybe tying the nuisance ordinances to some of the building codes so we could deal with the particular issue we had there. And I'm sure that's not, an isolated incident either, so that might be one strategy we'd look at too.
Several years ago, we changed our blackberry ordinances because there were people using blackberries as an excuse to not take care of their yards, saying they were a cane crop. So we had to tighten that down, serious. We had to tighten that down on what that looked like, how far away from the fence, because they were going over into the neighbor's yard and said, well, you can't make me trim those back because that's a crop. And we said, yeah, within a certain parameter. So we actually had to do that because of the unwillingness of some neighbors to keep their cane crop in their yard and not go all over the place. So, this is just one of those situations where we have to take a hard look at how we craft our language to encourage cooperative living within a community. Councilor Reed?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And I was also saying that we who are representatives on the neighborhood associations, we can also work with Nate and to kind of make this, I don't want to say, a regular update, give you regular updates. We can be responsible for following up with Nate in certain respects. Because as you say, this has been a long time in coming in a big discussion. And we need to figure out what the options are. So we as city councilors who are representatives on the neighborhood associations can also be a point of communication for that.
City Manager?
Part of this issue is also just pure resource. One of the things that Ben has done really well is he's integrated fairly thoroughly with the police department. And so he works a lot of issues that the police used to work. Probably 50% of his time are on things that they used to do, which is great because he's solving issues with them. It's great communication between the two organizations. They're able to use him as a resource to attack problems that they don't necessarily have the tools to do themselves in a sort of softer way. It can be very effective, but that's taking a bunch of his time. And so, not that those aren't important things like homelessness, things like, houses that have meth labs and whatnot. Some of the best way to approach those is through code enforcement as opposed to through traditional law enforcement to be more effective. So anyway, he's being very effective. It's just where he's putting, his time is limited and we only have one of him. And so when Nate says resource, he may mean resource, like another person. If you really want to continue making code enforcement a priority for the community, one person probably isn't enough for a town of this size, especially with our integrated approach with policing and whatnot. And that's very effective and it's good, but it's hard to do with one person. So, John, do you have any comment about your use of Ben and how well he integrates?
I'll harken back to when President Trump wanted to gut the State Department, and General Mattis said, if you're going to gut the State Department, you need to give me more ammunition. I think that's apropos for what we're talking about. The code enforcement officer solves a heck of a lot of crime problems by coming in the back door. It's a big win for City of Keizer.
So what I'm hearing, though, is we start looking at workloads and call volumes and so forth. This is a conversation we will continue to have regarding our resourcing. Our population is increasing. We do have more residential properties coming online. And as we're trying to make sure that we have an integrated approach, we also have to look at the reality of one human being and what their capacity is. So I believe we'll be looking to all of you to recommend to us when we reach that tipping point of we need to start looking at additional resourcing. and what that looks like in terms of level of service. It's true of all of our services as a city that we've had to take a hard look at how much we can expect staff members to produce in a certain time period in a realistic way. I believe that all of our city employees are extraordinary people, but even extraordinary people only have 24 hours in a day, and we don't expect you to be working 24 hours in a day. So we need to be very aware of our resourcing, what's appropriate, and when we hit that limit, what we can handle so we can start planning ahead. So I think that'd be helpful for us to know. Okay? All right, so we'll get recommendations back on coordination and opportunities, and then opportunities for communication with our neighborhood associations so we can continue to work on some of these issues in our neighborhood associations. Is that good?
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you very much. Appreciate your service. Darrell Richardson, come on down. Good to see you.
Darrell Richardson, 3985 Rivercrest Drive, Keizer. I've been in Keizer 51 years, and I've seen a lot of good things happen here. And I'd like to see another good thing happen. I'd like to talk about the ordinance on smoking. Could you answer me if we're going anywhere with that, or is it kind of a stalemate, or should I?
The next agenda item after the public hearing is the Parks ordinance.
I saw that after I
It's in
signed
there.
in, so
They can't tell you yet.
We can't tell you yet.
You have to wait.
So the answer is stay tuned here for a little bit, and we're going to have that conversation.
thank you much.
Thank you. I appreciate all the work you do for our community.
Yes.
You're welcome. I enjoy it.
All right. I love it when somebody just, kind of gives you that segue into the next agenda items. Is there anybody else who would like to address the council on something other than what's scheduled for a public hearing? All right, we will move on then to that public hearing, and this is the Keizer Development Code Text Amendment, Section 2.127, Historic Resources, and Sections 1.200, 2.123, 2.408, 2.431, 2.432, 3.101, 3.112, and 3.202. Hike. City Manager, I'm going to open the public hearing. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Brown?
Well, there were a lot of numbers there, but most of those are simply the sections of our development code where there were references to the historic district. So I hope you didn't read every one of those chapters breathlessly, waiting for some major changes in most of those. So basically, this change comes to you because what happens when you actually send staff to training, they find out what's going on with statutory changes, and the historic sections have been changing in our legislation. So this effort is to reflect those current changes in the state statutes, and so we put together a proposal that would demonstrate that we were listening and we were paying attention. The Planning Commission actually held a public hearing on May 9th to consider the proposed changes to the Keizer Development Code. And that was 2.127 is the meat of the change that we're looking at. However, as legal did their analysis, there were some other housekeeping matters that we needed to do. So the brief staff report pretty much outlines the intent of why we're doing this. And so basically what we are trying to do is change the process so that it be more reflective of the fact that a property owner can actually request or deny the desire to be listed. I might point out that we have been working on this text amendment long before, as you may know, there was an issue raised about the Herber House. This process was well in play while that dialogue happened after that. So this is not in response to any specific input or direction. This is simply in response to the changing legislation. Some of the major changes that we have here is we want to make sure that we're talking about the resource, a historic resource that we have in our city. We would like to not simply say that the entire city is a district because of the implications that that would have, as though we are under an overarching overlay district. So we want to make this specific to a specific resource. We want to give the property owner the statutory requirements for their desire to opt out. And as you may remember, the Herbers opted out of the proposed designation, and that was before you, while all of this was in play. So we had to rely upon the statute, not on our local ordinance. So I don't really need to go through every one of the wordsmithing things that we did. So if you have any questions about where we're going with this, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much. Are there any questions on the staff report? All right. Then into public hearing testimony. I don't have anybody signed up to testify on this. Is there anybody here who would like to speak on this issue? All right, seeing none. Close public hearing. Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Keizer City Council direct staff to prepare an ordinance with findings to adopt the proposed revisions.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Keizer City Council direct staff to prepare an ordinance with the findings to adopt the proposed revisions as presented. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you very much. That's a lot of detailed work. We appreciate. All right, that takes us into administrative action. Item 8A is the Keizer Little League update. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Wood.
Madam Mayor, City Council, I'm here to say I apologize for not bringing back a more formal report tonight. The last couple months have been a little busy with the budget season, getting all that stuff wrapped up. I did want to let you know that I have met with the Little League president and the secretary several times. We've made some great progress looking at their financials. We had a few loose ends that we wanted to wrap up before we brought something back more formal to you. So with that, we do anticipate that we'll have a formal review ready by the next council meeting. I'm willing to take any questions.
All right, thank you very much. Any questions? All right, I appreciate the work that you've been putting in, working with the Keizer Little League board members, and I also appreciate their willingness to put the effort in to make sure that that everything is as transparent, as accurate as possible. We appreciate that.
Yeah,
So is anybody
I would like to
have any-
add that both the president and secretary have been really great to work with. So.
Okay, we appreciate that. Good to know. All right, and I understand that the ball field's been very busy with a lot of kids out playing baseball for Keizer Little League and McNary Youth Baseball, and the weather's been great for it. So that sounds like a good thing for the kids in our community. All right, any questions on the timeline for this reporting? Okay, thank you very much. That takes us to item 8B, an ordinance establishing Keizer Parks regulations repealing ordinance number 2010-618 and ordinance 2013-679. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. City Attorney Johnson.
Thank you, Chris, Madam Mayor, and Council. And before I give the formal staff report for Darrell and others on TV or in the audience, my apologies for the delay here. The smoking thing got caught up because we had delayed for quite some time a lot of amendments, as you can see tonight, that finally it was like, now the smoking thing has come up. I don't want to come back to council twice. Let's just make these changes. Well, those changes took a bit longer, both on my end and with the Parks Board, than I anticipated. The Parks Board had two separate meetings on the park regulations to go over those changes, and so in 2 separate months. And so that's what occurred last month after the second one. They did recommend all the changes you see in all the different colors there. And so in hindsight, we probably should have just brought the smoking back separate and get that out of the way earlier. But we thought, well, we'll just do it in one meeting. So that was the reason, and that's how that occurred. As you can see, we have a red line copy there with a lot of different colors. Looks like the purple is kind of close to the red color, so I hope you can make that out. In my staff report, I've indicated, and I'll just go through the staff report unless, Madam Mayor, did you want to go through page by page or just the general highlights?
I think that, well, I'm good with general highlights. Does anybody
Okay.
want to do something more detailed?
All right, so let me go ahead for the sake of the audience and go over some of the highlights then. In section 7, right now it's been kind of unclear what somebody can reserve or rent in portions of the park. The gazebo can be reserved, the amphitheater, but areas of the park, other amenities, Claggett Creek, I believe, there's a picnic shelter there that could be reserved. But it's been unclear, well, can we reserve this portion of a park or this other amenity? And so because there's a lot of different parks and a lot of different park amenities, we've added the word portion of a park area to the Public Works Director's discretion to create a list of areas that can be reserved. We don't want to leave it wide open because we don't want to discourage or even cause any problems with public use of the park. That's what it's there for, is general public. They're not there to rent out whole parks all the time. So with this change, the Parks Director, or excuse me, Public Works Director can make a list of reservable park areas or amenities. In the same section, subsection 373, we added a small change to make it clear that if there's conditions attached to a permit, and usually this is going to be with a big kind of event, that the permit is not actually granted until all those conditions are met. That wasn't clear in the past. In section 9, we wanted to make it clear on the Keizer Rotary Amphitheater that it's on a first-come, first-served basis if it's not being previously reserved, so someone can go down and use the amphitheater if it's not reserved, similar to like the Little League Park in off-season. The Parks Board wanted to make sure to allow that same first-come, first-served for events at Claggett Creek Park or the gazebo. So if it's not otherwise reserved, people are able to use that on a first-come, first-served basis.
Before you go on to that one, I do have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm thinking of the Little League Park. That is a little bit different because that is managed under a contractual agreement.
True. Yeah, that isn't the same. Right now, on off-season and off days, it is open for use. So any member of the public can go down and use it, but not when it's being used for Little League or other games that are paying the slot fees, that sort of thing.
So there's been some question regarding that practice because when people come in and do so, sometimes they don't leave it in the same condition they found it.
Right.
And then there's some work that has to go into restoring it for play. Has there been conversation, or is that going to be part of the larger conversation about the governance of the field going forward?
I had heard that. I have not heard that recently, but I have heard that in years past. And that's an issue separate from the park regulations. Well, actually, it wouldn't be separate from the park regulations. It'd be park regulations and the management agreement, both, with whoever's the manager of the fields, if the council wants to revisit that. The difficulty, of course, is you can't really lock it up very well. But you could certainly, if you wanted to enforce it and change the rules, But right now, it is open for the public use if it's not I think the term is priority time or used under the manager. So that would be something that you could revisit, see if you want to change that. I haven't had any direct calls like that in the last maybe couple years, but that's just me. So Bill or Robert may have heard, or maybe you folks have heard of problems there with the fields being used, but that is an issue.
And that might be something to be taken up as part of a general discussion about what the governance of that that facility will look like and whether or not that has to be refined. Again, our population is increasing, the demand for outdoor play space is increasing, so we might have to have that conversation.
Right.
All right, thank you. Sorry, I disrupted.
Yeah, no problem. I was actually looking for that section, but I couldn't find it right away, but that's
On
all right.
section 9?
Yeah, section 9, correct. I wanted to see the exact language of that, but that's all right. Okay. Section 14, this is the smoking language, and the Parks Board, I think, added vaping to that, too. Let me turn to it here. Pretty straightforward. No person may ignite, smoke, or vape any tobacco, tobacco product, legal or illegal drugs of any type, or any other material in any area of any park or park facility. So that was the general concept coming from the Parks Board recommendation a few months ago. I tweaked the language a little bit to make sure the meaning was clear. So I don't know, are there any questions on the smoking prohibition? Okay. Next change is really just kind of modifying to match up what we currently do with regard to liquor issues with the Oregon Liquor Control Commission, or OLCC, and insurance requirements. So we wrote that in section 15. In section 16, this was the drone issue, which you may have seen in the newspaper. After a lot of debate, the Parks Board is recommending allowing small unmanned aerial systems, is the word, or drones in all parks, as long as they're in accordance with Federal Aviation Administration and the Oregon revised statutes. There is an allowance in section 16 for what was called drone zones, if you will, areas where drones would be encouraged. But I want to point out to council that the current proposal would allow drones in any part of any of the parks, the way it's currently worded. And if you want to try to get through all the multicolored part, that's on page 19 of the ordinance. I don't know your electronic copy, but page 19 of the ordinance, section 16, you can see some different options were listed there. Ended up with the one that starts at the bottom of the page, which again would allow drones in any area of any of the parks. So that's an issue that council may wish to consider. And I'll go ahead and jump to the last one with regard to fine violations. After a lot of discussion kind of back and forth, I had proposed, and these are completely from me, I want to take the blame or the credit, both. But the Parks Board was wrestling with exactly how to do that. They seemed, some of the current ones seemed a little inconsistent. And so just for starting purposes, I said you could, which one's more serious than others, Some of them looked like serious ones that weren't very big fines, and some of them looked like minor ones that had really big fines. And after a lot of discussion, they decided to just go with those figures. You may want to start over on those dollar amounts towards the end of the ordinance. So those are the high points. There's a lot of other tweaked areas if you went through the ordinance. But with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. There was a lot of detail in there. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a clarification on, is our volleyball courts rented as well? Or is that a sign up, or is it first come, first served? Because I've heard some.
Yeah, I've heard both ways. I don't know, Chris, if you remember. I don't. I know that there'd been a lot of talk about having some sort of sign up there, but as far as I'm aware, there is no formal reservation for those fields.
I do have somebody from the Parks Board here also who might be able to talk about that. but
Mr.
City Manager?
Lawyer, could you help us with that?
Mr. Lawyer, would you help us with that?
Yes. We substitute one lawyer for another here.
Lawyer by
He's
name.
way better looking than I am. Madam Mayor, members of the council staff, good evening. Matt Lawyer, Keizer Parks Advisory Board. Specifically as related to the sand volleyball courts, one of the conditions that Mr. Snyder had kind of suggested in the construction of those was to kind of keep them as a first come, first serve and not go into so much of a reservation status. Part of that was because it could potentially interfere with the youth and their activities as they were doing the sand sharks and things like that. We kind of followed along with that same recommendation as he began the project, but as I recall, there was nothing I think we lean more in favor of not going the reservation route versus going the reservation route. Again, the intent there is to keep the kids active and not try to do that. Although I think because it is tied to a recreational piece somewhat similar to, and I can't remember exactly what it's tied to, I think he does kind of have an option there for the sand sharks thing, and I don't really know how
Yeah,
that
my
came
recollection
about.
was that it was open for use, first come, first serve, unless there was something formal happening,
Correct.
like a tournament or a program occurring.
That's correct, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that, I recall that as well. And so, you know, certainly it's up to the council and whether or not they want to continue that, but I think that was a huge investment by a group and an individual, and I think that from my experience being down there over the last 6 weeks picking up sticks, people are using it, and
Oh, yeah.
when the sharks are coming in, they go and they do their business, and it's just a great asset. So that's kind of where we're at on that one.
And if I recall correctly, we had that conversation about whether or not we should do that from the outset. And the decision was left to, let's see how this develops, how the youth, you're not the only one, Counselor Ryan, youth develops. And then if the need arises because of heavy use or a lot of people wanting to schedule things out there, then we could revisit that conversation. And I don't think Mr. Snyder would have been opposed to that, but I think he wanted it to develop organically and take those steps should the need arise. So that's my recollection.
Sounds pretty clear.
All right, thank you, and thank you to you and the Parks Board for the work on all of this. Appreciate it. Mr. Johnson, back to you.
Yeah, I did not have anything further. I went
Plus,
through
there were
the end of the staff report. Again, there's a lot of other tweaks in there if you wanted to go through some of those, most of them just language ones. I picked out for the staff report kind of the items that we discussed at the main items that we discussed at the Parks Board level.
So we were going down, seeing if anybody had any questions on any of these changes to the parks regulations. Councilor Anderson.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So on the just wanting to hone in a little bit here on the violation
Yes.
section.
Yeah.
Just curious, you just kind of that was the number. Those are the numbers you came up with. Or is that just a set amount? Is it like an up to dollar amount, that sort of
yeah,
thing?
and I appreciate that, Councilor Anderson, because I kind of glossed over the details on that issue. So if you look at the beginning, it's at the top of, actually bottom of page 26, top of page 27. It says, for purposes of determining the base fine amounts, the following amounts shall be imposed. And I'm going to go back to those in a minute, but then if you go several pages forward, I tried to make it less pages, but there was no way to make it shorter. The base fine amount is the maximum fine. Currently, the ordinance says the court can reduce it by, the minimum fine shall be 75% of the base fine. I suggested changing that to 50%, giving the court more latitude for first-time offenders. So you may want to address that as well as the dollar amount. So going back to the dollar amounts, and let's just use the first one as an example. It's the Carlson, it goes in order basically of the violation number. So the first violation number is Section 5, subsection 3, Carlson Skate Park violation. There's certain rules there. That was $100. The next one is using the park without a permit when you're supposed to get a permit, $200. There's a couple more $200 ones. And then there's one where I thought it was more serious, having to do with hunting or fishing, and then fires I thought was pretty serious, so that was $500. What that would mean is whatever those dollar amounts are that show in the red brackets would be, and if you wanted to see the clean version, I've also attached the non-red line version. So if the base fine is $200, the court would have the ability to reduce that to $100, but no lower. So 50% of whatever it is there. You may wish to stick with the 75% to give the judge less discretion with the idea that perhaps in your policy direction we don't want to reduce those fines that much. Or you could choose to change the dollar amounts in any of the fines or both, whichever you want to do.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. It's just whenever I'm looking at something that's making changes or
Right.
putting in place statutorily, what have you, certain dollar amounts, sometimes there's a mentality we want to throw the book at somebody and all of that, and that can sometimes be a little bit excessive based on the type of, violation that we're talking about, that type of thing. So
Right.
I just, I appreciate the information.
Yeah,
Thank you.
and I would invite the council to skim through there and see if you think maybe any of those amounts are too high or too low for the particular one. The clean version is at the end, which again, I don't have the electronic version, but is actually a little easier to read because you can see what the violation is a little clearer. But they range from 100 to 500. A large portion of them are the 250 or 150. I really looked hard at that, and I talked to Robert, and Bill about the idea of trying to, because they were a little wider, and trying to make them, why don't we just come up with like 3? It was a little hard. I think there's either $4 or $5 amounts. I'm not sure. It was like, well, that one should be a little more, so.
Well, one thing I remember when I was reviewing Judge Myers a couple of years ago, just getting a little bit of understanding in terms of giving flexibility to that, and that's some discretion, exactly. I think that's very good. Thank you.
Thank you. And then to be clear, in the clean version, because I'm looking at the red line right now, it's the 50% is the recommended language.
Right.
Okay. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you. Who's enforcing the codes?
I don't know that there's any direct day-to-day enforcement. I think we usually just get cooperation. I am not aware of any actual citation written for violation of the park regulations. And as far as who would be doing that, I think that would be a police officer. That would not be a code enforcement.
So that leads me to the question then, these are going to be signs that we place, like let's say no smoking or what have you, with the
Yeah,
ordinance and
we
then
probably won't list
and
every single kind of violation, but yeah, we do have a sign that we will be looking at modifying those signs for some other reasons. We won't probably be putting the dollar amounts on those.
Well, actually that was my next point. So if we did put a dollar amount or a higher dollar amount, since we're kind of looking at the law of people regulating themselves, maybe they'd be more deterred not to if they had a higher dollar amount.
Well, that's a very good question, Councilor Ryan. For example, and they happen to be right together, subsection 10 and 11, fires is $500. Smoking is $200. You may want to address that. Maybe you don't think $200 is enough money, but those might be examples that, okay, we're not going to list every single one, but having a fire where you're not supposed to have a fire, or smoking in particular, I would think we would have signage for those. I assume that would be probably an administrative decision with the city manager and the public works director on exactly what went on those signs. But if the council has some direction on those issues, we'd be glad, of course, to follow your direction.
Sure. Well, given the point that the fact that we haven't actually issued a citation, but yet we have them in place, it might be a deterrent since these are new policies, and we want to really make a statement that, this is not going to be tolerated in our parks.
Right.
Maybe that would take it a little more seriously if we did have the signage and the higher fee, since we're asking people to kind of regulate themselves. They might go, whoa, that's an expensive cigarette. Just a thought. Thank you.
Councilor Anderson.
Well, good point, and I'll look forward to seeing those. I definitely, our staff will make some good choices there. I think that's a good point. I can recall seeing whether it's the distracted driving law that's just came into effect, or I think there's one I saw that the legislature increased fines for littering. That can get pretty excessive.
Yeah.
But yeah, like to Councilor Ryan's point, that could probably deter some otherwise bad behavior, one would hope.
Well, and I think it also speaks highly that in the vast majority of cases, in conversation, cooperation can be achieved. And I think that's always been a goal in our public safety, is to educate and to encourage cooperation with being a good neighbor. I mean, there are people who insist upon not, and then we have options to help with another form of education, which sometimes could come as a citation. But I think by far and away, most people in our community have chosen to be a little bit more amenable. Councilor Anderson.
I'm sorry, not to prolong this, but something that did jump out, maybe you said this already, Shannon, but noting some of the language that you have in the ordinance, appears as though you are tying several of these items to Oregon Revised Statute anyway, insofar as
Well,
what level of class violation they are.
The clean version eliminates that.
Oh,
And then,
okay.
and the reason is because the state statutes previously had, their amounts were kind of all over the place, and so we felt that it was appropriate to not have to check state statutes. So when you go to the clean version, you can, and we didn't put all red there, so that, my apologies that it would have just looked too weird. So, but the clean version just simply says, section 13, fires 500, for example, on the clean version. So it doesn't refer to the ORSs.
And I might point out also that the Keizer Fire District also has authority down there, and they have their own ordinance, authority to be able to impose consequences for fires and other related problems. So this could be a double whammy for people who choose to go ahead and light up and cause damage. So our action would not preclude the Keizer Fire District from taking action as well, if I remember correctly.
That's correct.
Any other questions on any of the sections that are being addressed? This is the work of a lot of meetings with the Parks Board, a lot of community conversation, a lot of concerns that people have brought to us over the years, and I'm really happy to have this in front of us. All right, anything else? Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Keizer City Council adopt a bill for an ordinance establishing Keizer Parks regulations, repealing ordinance number 2010-618 and ordinance number 2013-679.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Keizer City Council adopt a bill for an ordinance establishing the Keizer Parks regulations, repealing ordinance number 2010-618 and ordinance number 2013-679. Further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. That was a huge undertaking on the Parks Board. Thank you, guys. All right, let's go on then to the resolution establishing the park use fees, repealing to R 2010-2006, R 2012-2229, what? .1?
That's an interesting story.
Okay, I look forward to it. And R 2015-2619, City Manager.
It's really not that interesting, but Shannon,
Thank you, Chris, Madam Mayor, and Council. As I recall, the story behind the .1 was that a resolution was adopted. Unfortunately, there was a difficulty with it of some type. Another resolution got the very next number already assigned to it, and so we were forced to come up with a .1 to distinguish them. So that's my recollection of it. It's been a few years back. So I know you wanted to hear that, and everyone but Chris thought it was interesting. But, no? No?
We'll have to ask Mayor
Well,
Chris.
apparently,
if she
apparently
remembers
Nate
this
and
one.
Chris didn't think it was interesting. In any event, it's been several years since the park fees have been reviewed, and they do not have a automatic escalator clause, for lack of a better, indexing, I think is the term that the finance director uses. And Robert Johnson, working with Bill Lawyer, suggested these amounts. It was difficult to do it within the resolution, and so I asked our assistant, Tammy Harms, to prepare the park fee comparison sheet, if you will. So that gives you an idea of the current fees. There's a little apples to oranges on some of them. For example, I'm looking down, amphitheater, the current one says $78 per hour with a 2-hour, no, $78 for 2 hours. Now it's $160 for 4 hours, meaning renting for 2 hours doesn't make any sense with
Half a day does.
yeah, and things like that. So it's a little apples to oranges comparison. That's why it was kind of hard to redline this, if you will. But that shows you the comparison in the fees. That is not formally part of the resolution, but you can see the resolution itself, $40 minimum for 2 hours and 15 an hour after that for shelters, temporary structures, and facilities, except for the amphitheater, $100 minimum and for 2 hours, and $50 for other areas that aren't shelters, et cetera, for reserved for private parties, et cetera, then the $80, and then $80 for 2 hours for a single sports field. What we determined is if there's any additional areas, and I won't read through all the rest of them there, but if there's any additional areas, we may be coming back to you based on the item that we just had before you. So if it turns out that there's additional reservable areas that make sense and don't fall into these categories, we may need to come back with you for the fees for those. And I think that pretty much covers it. There is a discretion of the city manager or the city manager's designee. Fees may be waived for city Keizer-sponsored events or for school use. And I think that's in the current ordinance actually though too. So with that, and it does have an indexing one, automatically adjusted every 3 years, which is similar to what we currently have. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay, any questions on the staff report? All right, hearing none. Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the Keizer City Council adopt Resolution R 2018, establishing Keizer Park use fees, repealing Resolution R 2010-2006, Resolution R 2012-2229.1, and Resolution R 2015-2619.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that the Keizer City Council adopt Resolution R 2018, establishing Keizer Park use fees, repealing R 2010-2006, R 2012-2229.1, and R 2015-2619. Discussion. And I would have just one thing that I would like to comment on, and that is the reservable park areas. I think that's a great idea, and I would encourage the Parks Board to work with the Keizer Festival Advisory Board on what those spaces might be. So they can help look at what areas might be appropriate to make reservable with our 19 park system. So that would just be one side comment to help define those places rather than rely on, our staff to try to come up with that, have our committees be able to work together on those recommendations. Any other discussion on the fees? Seeing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Consent calendar, Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are 7 items on the consent calendar tonight. A is a resolution authorizing the city manager to purchase 4 Ford K8B Explorer 4-wheel drive base vehicles for police department. It's a repeal of R 2018-2863 and R 2018-2870. B is a resolution authorizing the disposition of surplus property, which is a police department vehicle. C is a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign Second Amendment and first extension of City of Keizer custodial services contract with Willamette Valley Rehabilitation Center, Inc. D is a resolution declaring the city's intent to initiate a street lighting local improvement district in the Summerview Estates and directing the city engineer to make a survey and file a written report with the city recorder. E is approval of the June 13th, 2018 work session minutes. F is approval of the June 13th special session minutes. And G is approval of the June 18 city council regular session minutes.
Thank you very much. Are there any polls? Council President Parsons.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Second.
The consent calendar has been moved and seconded. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion passes unanimously. Okay. Excuse me. Council liaison reports. Councilor Anderson, would you like to start us off?
Sure, yes, ma'am. I think the only thing I really have to report on is just a couple of upcoming liaison meetings that I will be attending. Keizer Chamber Board meeting for July, and then the Stormwater Advisory Committee, or Stormwater Advisory Council around that same time. And it's July 2nd, which means that I'm immediate past president of my Rotary Club, so I'm excited about that. And just happy 4th of July to everybody. Thank you.
Congratulations. Thank you. All right, Councilor Herrera.
I want to thank everybody for covering for me the last couple of weeks I've been down. and it's been pretty tough. But I've learned a lot about soccer.
And the people.
It was surprising for Belgium to come back from 2 runs down.
They call them goals in soccer.
And I've decided one thing, though, that is the real football. You know, really, if you think about it,
Yep.
that's real football. Anyway, because those guys have like hands on their feet. I mean, they're amazing. Appreciation for soccer, folks. And again, I reiterate that for you folks' patience with me, I had a pretty serious situation, and it's been slow recovery, but I do appreciate it. I'm sort of kind of back. This is my first day. So I missed a whole bunch of stuff, and I apologize to the Hall of Fame committee because I couldn't make to that. I am going to be participating on July 21st with the People's Republic, People's Representatives, excuse me, council over in Woodburn with Susan Castillo and Anthony Medina and Representative Teresa Alonso. And what they're doing is they're training and doing panels for Latinos, preparing them for running for office and things like that. So it's kind of cool, civic stuff. And then also I wanted to tell everybody July 4th is coming up, and please be safe on this weekend, this holiday season. It gets crazy sometimes, and they already started doing fireworks in my neighborhood.
Mine too.
Anyway, so, but please be safe when you're out there, and have a nice season.
All right, thank you, and welcome back. We are glad to see you up and about, sir.
Thank you very much.
Council President Parsons.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I too was, the last couple of weeks have been just nice, actually. Didn't have to do very much. Coming up, though, is July 4th is Volcanoes game. I will be throwing out the first pitch, and there's still tickets available. The Marion County Commissioners Breakfast that was going to be held on the 12th has been canceled because there's something like a county fair going on at the fairgrounds, and that's the 12th through the 15th. And then on the 12th, we have the Traffic Safety Bikeways Committee, but Councilor Freeman will be filling in for me as I will be on vacation, and that's all I have.
All right, thank you very much. Councilor Reed.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I attended the Keizer Heritage Foundation annual meeting last Tuesday, and we got some good things decided and approved new bylaws, and it was a great informational sort of situation. And I would encourage you, the Keizer Heritage Foundation is going to be doing a lot with membership drives, and if you are at all interested in preserving that particular heritage, please keep an eye out for those opportunities. I also served at the community dinner last Wednesday, and that was lots of fun and excellent turnout, and some really good hamburgers and hot dogs, thanks to Mr. Kohler frying them up single-handedly, so yeah, you. How many? 400. Oh, 400.
Wow.
So that was, yeah, huge. Mr. Gerloff already mentioned that we have Southeast Keizer Neighborhood Association this Thursday at 6:30, and we're going to be primarily planning the Neighborhood Night Out, which is coming up the first Tuesday in August, so that is something to look forward to as well. And also the Shakespeare in the Park is coming up the last week of July, and they're going to be doing The Tempest, which is not quite as familiar as some of the other things that have been done for Shakespeare in the Park. So I'd really encourage you to visit their Facebook page. They're going to be having some information about what The Tempest is all about and kind of giving you some background information, so you can be all ready for that. But it will be great fun, and I will be plugging it more in detail next meeting. And that's about it. Thanks.
Fabulous. Councilor Freeman.
Pretty quiet as well. We have the Planning Commission on July 11th. Stormwater's already been mentioned on the 12th, and traffic. We will not be having a volunteer coordinating committee meeting in July and maybe in August. So if there's any openings, we'll be posting that. Because we're finally, like I said earlier, full, which is great. Just wishing everyone happy 4th and to keep your pets safe, and just be aware of all the young youth that are out and about riding their bikes or walking, and some are on their cell phones, as we know, walking and not really paying attention. So just as a driver, I would say just really be more mindful. And if you're walking on your cell phone, maybe you should not be walking while you're texting or something, right? Because I've seen a lot of people just walk out in front of cars, unfortunately, and luckily everyone's paying attention. And I know it's the temperature is not as hot here as it is in some parts of the country, but just, again, make sure everyone's drinking lots of water and leave no one in your car during the heat. So, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Good reminders. Councilor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Roland, I'm glad you're back. I was worried about you. So it's nice to see your shining face. Just a reminder that we do have the summer concert series on Saturday nights. It's a great entertainment, great value, just great time to get out and be part of your community. And I just have one more thing, and that's congratulations to our Beavers.
Yeah, how about those Beavers? Way to go.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Just a few things to report. The Council of Governments Board met on the 19th, and the Council of Governments continues this is an organization that the city is a member of. I serve on that board. It's Marion, Polk, and Yamhill counties, and provides services, a number of which our city does enjoy those services. And we share resources with other cities and jurisdictions within our three-county area. Working together, we're able to share resources and also be a lot stronger working together. The Homeless Initiative is one of them. Our transportation planning is another. GIS, which I think is geospatial or anyway, it's all the land use planning and economic development are some of the services that are offered. And they're also looking at how we may also share resources in other services among especially the small cities in our three-county area to help them provide the quality that they need, but what they may not be able to do individually. So it's a pleasure to serve on that board. On the 20th, I attended the Dinner for Women in Construction. It was their appreciation night, and I really appreciate the businesses that are helping train women in the construction industry. They will also be, they're involved in Taylor's House, which is the home for runaway and homeless youth. It'll be the overnight shelter that's under construction right now. And so they're not only providing on-site services, but they will also be there to mentor the young women who come through there, young women and men, in construction trades, and encourage them to get involved in these very well-paying, high-skills trades that they can move into really good jobs and not under the streets. So I'm very, very pleased that so many people in our community and businesses in our community are investing in our young people for good skills. Stick pickup at Keizer Rapids Park, Matt Lawyer mentioned that earlier, and on just about every Saturday for the last, 2 months, we've had crews out there, and he's been out there every single Saturday. I've been out there a few times. My dog loved it, by the way, because she's obsessed with sticks and thought that was the best thing ever. But I really appreciate the volunteers who have come out to help do that, is helping get those fields ready for plowing and seeding later in the summer. So everybody who's been out there helping pick up sticks, it sounds tedious, and it's dirty, but it's a lot of fun when we get somebody who's fun to talk to while you're doing that. So thank you to Matt Lawyer, to Rotarians, to Claggett Creek Watershed Council, Parks Board members, neighbors who have been out there to help out. So keep up the good work. SCAS, the Salem Keizer Area Transportation Study, has been working on a number of things, not the least of which is the Regional Transportation System Plan Update. That will have a hearing in July, at the fourth Tuesday in July for the next sections. And we're also working on safe routes to school and some other projects there. I'm really happy about our traffic safety, who've been very, very active in developing projects for safe routes to school funding. We've never been able to be this well positioned for that program, so thank you for that. The KRA concert series does begin this weekend. The first concert, though, is going to be Friday. So if you'll go on to their website, you'll see some are Friday, some are Saturday. So thank you for Councilor Ryan for reminding us about that. Summer's here. Get down to the amphitheater. Have a great time with your friends and neighbors. Enjoy some great music. And it's just become part of everybody's summer. At one end of Shamawa, you've got great concerts. At the other end of Shamawa, you've got great baseball. Keizer's got it all. And in between, you've got some really good places to eat. Marion County Fair was mentioned. And then on the 16th, the next council meeting, I will be out of town for business related to my day job. So Council President Parsons will run that meeting, and I will be out of the state. So will, unless they really need to reach me for something, will be Mayor Pro Tem for that week. One more reminder for all council members, the League of Oregon Cities registration opened today for registration for the conference at the end of September. I highly encourage all of you to attend. This is going to be a very different conference. The work that's gone into the program planning is very significant, and I think you will find it a very worthwhile event to attend. So please let Tracy know that A, if you can attend, and B, which day or days that you'll be able to be there. And I think you will find it very worthwhile. And with that, that's all I've got on, oh, Councilor Herrera.
Yes, I forgot one thing. Last week we lost our
Yes.
former city councilor, former city manager, Wally Moe. And, he had been here forever, and he was a real Mr. Keizer, original one. And I just, I just want to remember all the good things that he did and some of the leadership that he showed. He was my friend. He was like the biggest sports guy ever. And I always remember, I was telling my son that when my son was playing for the state championship, he said, "What are you doing here? Go out there." And I had already gone to one playoff game, and that was the year they went to the state championship. And so he says, "Get out of here." So I went to the game, and there he was. He was already at the game.
Nice.
That's the kind of guy he was. He was a real sports guy. And the one thing I'll always remember is that he introduced me to Mike Tyson in Las Vegas. So that's his claim to fame with me. So anyway, he'll be sorely missed, and my condolences to the family. And they're a big part of Keizer for many, many years. The whole family, the Moe family. So that was my 2 cents on that. Thank you.
Well, I really appreciate that, and join with you and all of us in extending our condolences to the Moe family and our great thanks for the service that Wally provided for our city. Thank you for that. City Manager.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Tracy? Tim? Chief?
We have 4 of our 5 officers hired on the fee graduating not this Friday, but the following Friday. Once they have their feet underneath them, probably 3 months later, we'll introduce those 5 and the 5th hire to you to be ceremoniously sworn in.
And the National Night Out.
Yes, thank you. National Night Out, first Tuesday in August, and it's always a big turnout and actually rather enjoyable. Hopefully it won't be as hot as it was 2 years ago. Thank you.
Yeah.
Was it? Yeah.
So if people want to sign up, is that live on our website?
You can go to our website, yes. And yes, please sign up. You don't have to sign up, but if you'd like counselors or police officers or fire to come by, you'll need to sign up.
All right, thank you very much.
Mr. Brown?
I have nothing.
Counselor?
Nothing tonight, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and I will be out Thursday, Friday, making a really, really long weekend. So,
Well, enjoy.
thank you.
That takes us to written communications, and I do have one letter from a group called the Willamette Falls Locks Commission. This is addressed to all of us on the city council. So dear Mayor Clark, Councilors Reed, Freeman, Parsons, Herrera, Ryan, and Anderson, we are officially underway. The Willamette Falls Locks Commission has been formed to determine the future of the locks, and we are meeting on a regular basis. As you may know, in 2017, the Oregon Legislature passed Senate Bill 256 to look at alternatives for ownership and oversee the potential recommissioning of the Willamette Falls locks, since the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers intends to dispose of the locks. Options expressed by the Corps for disposal include decommissioning the locks, which would involve installing a concrete bulkhead on the river to seal up the locks, therefore preventing future use by Oregonians, or repairing and transferring ownership of the locks to a new entity, either private, public, or a combination of both, for future operations, including commercial, transportation, and recreational uses. I've been elected as the Willamette Falls Locks Commission Chair, and Clackamas County Commissioner Martha Schrader and Clackamas County Representative Sandy Carter are the co-vice chairs. I want to personally invite the City of Keizer to take part in our July 18 public meeting. There are several ways to participate and provide testimony to the commission regarding the locks. Join us in person between 3:30 and 4:30 at West Lynn City Hall Council Chambers. Written testimony to Turner Odell and the emails there, or a mail, letters. And for more information or background regarding the commission's work, information is on the website and is cited here. The 145-year-old Willamette Falls locks have the potential to bring significant economic, cultural, and recreational benefits to our region. If you have questions about the commission or offering testimony, please contact Turner Odell. Many thanks in advance for the City of Keizer support for the locks. All the best. Russell P. Axelrod, West Lynn Mayor, Willamette Falls Locks Commission Chair. So this is a topic that we have had no discussion about, and I am not up to speed on it. But I would encourage, I will be out of town during that week, so is there someone who'd be willing to at least listen in and maybe let us know what's going on with this and how it might impact Keizer? There has been discussion about how the Willamette River, connecting between here and then downstream to Portland, is a waterway that we want to remain navigable, what the pluses and minuses are for that for us. But I just really can't speak to this with any sort of background or knowledge.
What is the date again?
This would be on July 18?
18th from 3:30 to 4:30.
Right. So it's going to be in person, and then written testimony and so forth, and there is a website. So if we could learn more about that as well, but I would encourage, if somebody can at least let us know what's going on with that and how Keizer may or may be impacted. Okay, so, Councilor Rivera?
I'm gonna
Okay,
go depending on my
okay.
situation, but I'll look at it too. And we'll-
Councilor Anderson? Okay, all right, so we,
Copies of these and put them in our boxes, maybe?
okay, we'll get copies made to everybody, and then if we just have to watch quorum. But we have 3 of you that have indicated interest in finding out more.
I can't, Kim can't. So
Okay, so, Councilors Reed, Herrera, and Anderson, and then you'll bring back some information to us. Appreciate that. All right. Agenda input, July 9th, we don't have a topic for a work session at this point. We will be looking at some topics probably in the next couple, 3 months, but not for this month. So unless there is an objection, we will cancel the work session for next Monday. Okay, it is canceled. July 16th, we will meet at 7 o'clock in regular session. I will be absent, and Council President Parsons will be chairing that meeting, and then we will meet in regular session 7 p.m. on August 6th. All right, is there anything else for the good of the order? I join with everybody. Happy Independence Day. Oh, quick pause. I would like to extend courtesy, if you don't mind, for about a couple minutes for Transit Director Colleen Bush to talk to us. She was delayed because of personal issues. Would you be okay with about a couple minutes? Sure. All right, would you please come on down, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. Colleen Bush, member of the Salem Keizer Transit District, resident of Keizer. We had our board meeting for the Chariots Board on Thursday, and we made a couple of decisions I thought you might be interested in. Claire Adams, a 17-year-old from South Salem High School and a board member of the United Way of Mid-Willamette Valley, presented to us a fantastic proposal to, she requested that we donate one of our buses that we are going to be putting on, what is it when you're done using them?
Surplus?
Yes. Anyway, we're buying new buses, so we'll have some surplus. And she was asking for one of those to turn it into a mobile hygiene unit for the homeless in our area, of which the United Way will be helping her raise money along with the shoe program they do at South Salem High School. So it will have, she plans to have showers in it, toilets, maybe even a washer and dryer. So it's a mobile hygiene unit for that process. So that was, we said yes to that. We're going to research how that's going to happen and how we can partner with that. And we already partner with United Way in donating bus passes on a yearly basis. And we made that decision also on Thursday. And how that works is we donate to the United Way, and they have member agencies apply for bus passes for people who need those from temporary use. And so we do like 5,000 a year for them and distribute them. And I also have some testimony of success stories, if you don't mind me to read one of those. One of our Demunis Center clients was trying to brainstorm a way to buy a couple day passes to get groceries. He has SNAP benefits, but I don't know what that stands for.
Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program.
Thank you. But he usually bought only things he could eat on the go because his main transportation is a bike. He said he didn't mind doing that, however, he went through his food stamps halfway through the month. Community Resource Center gave him 2 individual bus passes so he could go to the grocery store a couple times throughout the month and buy enough supplies to last him between trips. This way, the amount he buys is bigger, and he gets better pricing than buying individual servings. He will be able to cook his own food and keep from going hungry throughout the month. Other comments are, it will keep me from having to walk 6 miles round trip to my clinic. Thank you so much. I'm on disability, so it helps me financially as well as physically, and it'll help me get home. So just want to let you know how we are able to partner with United Way in helping with the homeless and others in our community. That's all.
Thank you so much. And if people want to know more about these programs and get involved, are they on the Chariots website?
It's chariots.org.
All right. Thank you so much. And
Oh, we have a
appreciate
new
you.
website coming out. Fantastic new website was just presented at the meeting on Thursday. You can go to chariots.org and look up our YouTube stream and find out about it. Mr. Stephen Custer has been working really hard, and it's fantastic. So much easier to use. So,
Yay. All right. Thank you so much. We
Okay,
really
and thank you
appreciate
for-
you taking the time to come.
thank you.
All right. Is there anything else for the good of the order? Then have a happy Independence Day, and it is 8:22. We are adjourned.